Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, if you do enjoy the video that you came here to watch, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that little red subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. It really does help my audience grow. It really does help this channel grow. It means more than you realize. So go ahead, hit that little red button. Also, remember, full episodes of the Aaron Torres podcast, wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc. Now, here is the video that you came here for.
Necessarily pair them together, but both kind of similar type Saturdays. And so it feels like a good time to just kind of wrap this segment, come back, kind of wrap the show talking a little bit of Texas. Texas it's very interesting. They're almost like the mirror opposite of Texas A&M, at least coming into this weekend. Texas A&M was the top 10 team coming into the year. Texas, we kind of had moderate expectations for. We're going to pump the brakes. We've overhyped them before. We're going to take it easy. To Texas's credit, I think they created real buzz early in the season, nearly beat Alabama when Quinn Ewers goes down. Obviously, they were in control, take care of Oklahoma, sitting at 5-2, and we sit there and say, okay, we're finally starting to see it. Unfortunately, much like Texas A&M, they took a bad loss on Saturday. Final score 41-34 in Stillwater against the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and I understand. Oklahoma State's in the top 10. I get all that. But at the same time, Oklahoma State was down 1 million players to injury. Oklahoma State is a team that was coming off of a loss, was coming off of 3 straight games where they were actually outgained by the opponent. Texas was a 6-point favorite, and they lose in the most excruciating fashion. So let's get into it. Let's break it down. And to be clear, like, this is not going to be like a fire sark. Texas is overrated. Texas is like, that's not what we're going to do over the next few minutes. But at the same time, I will say, I do kind of understand any frustration from any Texas fan, because that loss on Saturday afternoon in Stillwater basically felt like 30 other losses that I have seen from Texas over the last decade or so. And like I said, when it comes to the loss on Saturday, like, what is so frustrating about it is a couple different things. One, I don't want to discredit Oklahoma State. Again, they were a top 10 team coming into this game. But as I just told you, ravaged with injuries. Their quarterback, Spencer Sanders, has been banged up, less than 100%, coming off a couple bad games. They lose to TCU last week. But as I told you on Friday's show, it's really been about 3 or 4 weeks in a row now where this team has done what it's taken to win outside of TCU, but they haven't been playing great football. And so what's especially frustrating if you're Texas, this was one that you could have had and maybe should have had. At one point, you're up 21-10 early in the second quarter of the game. And even as late as the late third quarter, you have a double-digit lead, 34-24. Then from there, Oklahoma State goes on a 17-0 run. I know we don't talk about runs in college, in football the way that we do basketball, but 17-0 run. Quinn Ewers throws 3 picks. You have a bunch of penalties, and Texas looks like Texas has before. And what I think is especially frustrating is a few things. One, besides the fact that we've seen this loss from Texas a million times, I do think what's different, this one feels different, especially this year, right? Like, you go through kind of the last 2 years under Texas. Year one, it's Steve Sarkisian. He's taken over, new program, all that. But even this year, what have we talked about on this show with Texas is that they are up until really the last 2 weeks, they're going to be graded on a curve if they don't have Quinn Ewers, because the bottom line is, at the end of the day, we have seen them with Quinn Ewers and we have seen them without, and they're a completely different team. And so we forgive them for losing by 1 to Alabama earlier this year, because Alabama's really good and you didn't have your starting quarterback and you were completely outplaying Alabama when that starting quarterback played. On top of that, when it comes to Texas, a few weeks after that, you lose to Texas Tech, but it's without Quinn Ewers. And we kind of I don't want to speak for everybody, but I kind of gave them a pass. I said, look, it's clear they're a different team. They're not calling the same game plan. They're not as aggressive. They're not as fearless. I am going to give them a pass. But when Quinn Ewers comes back, I want to see that early Alabama mindset from Texas. And to their credit, since he came back, they've been pretty good. Destroy Oklahoma, beat Iowa State in a close game. And again, I think that's why, if you're a Texas fan, you're so frustrated. You got to pass for Alabama for sure. You got to pass from many, including from me with Texas Tech. But this is the game where if you are really elevating yourself as a program, if you are really ready to go to the next level, this is one that you go win. And what's especially frustrating, I think, really a couple things. One, it was Quinn Ewers. Not saying a quarterback's not allowed to have a bad day, not saying anybody's perfect, but this is the 5-star guy. This is the guy that you have built the program around. This is the guy that has created so much hype, was so great against Oklahoma a few weeks ago. He just fell flat on his face. 19 of 49 passing, 3 interceptions for Quinn Ewers. And I know what people say, oh, Oklahoma State's a top 10 team. They had a great defense last year under Jim Knowles, who's at Ohio State. Oklahoma State came into this one with the worst pass defense in the Big 12 and 126th ranked pass defense in college football. And they had 3 interceptions, held Quinn Ewers to 19 of 49 passes. So 1, there's that. 2, we got to have the Steve Sarkisian conversation again. And again, for the millionth time, just in this segment, I'm not saying you fire him. I'm not saying you can. I'm not saying you will. But like, how many times do we have to see the same song and dance over and over with Steve Sarkisian? Right now, in year 2, midway point, we've obviously gone beyond the midway point as Texas has played 8 games. We're really at the 3/4 point, or 2/3 point. I guess it would be the 2/3 point. I'm not great at math. Forgive me. But we are now at the 2/3 point of year 2 under Steve Sarkisian. Okay. Year 1, you go 5-7. Right now, you're 5-3. I'm not great at math, but that means you're 10-10 overall as the head coach of Texas. Not great. I don't care the circumstances. I don't care who you inherited, all that stuff. That's not good. But what's even more concerning is a stat that blew me away. Texas now has 10 losses under Steve Sarkisian. In 5 of those losses, Texas has had a double-digit lead and blown a double-digit lead in 5 of their 10 losses under Steve Sarkisian. That is inconceivable to me. And so Quinn Ewers is back. Everybody's healthy for the most part. And you lose this game, and you lose the game that you've been losing it. And I think the way you've been losing, and I think it speaks to what I just talked about a minute ago. I get why like people think, oh, you don't like Texas because of this, because that. No, I like at this point, I kind of feel bad for their fans, man. I kind of feel bad for you fans. I know you guys listen to the show. I know you guys watch on YouTube. I get it. And it just feels like with this program, it's Groundhog Day. It's over and over. It's the same exact thing every single year. For the Tom Herman era, for the Steve Sarkisian era, for the Charlie Strong era, for the back end of the Mac Brown era. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Big win, bad loss. Beat Oklahoma, bad loss. Almost beat Alabama, get hot after, loss. It's just like, it's one thing if you're losing to Bama. It's one thing if Oklahoma's a top 5 team with Lincoln Riley and whoever, Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray. It's another thing when you're going on the road to an Oklahoma State team that's been banged up, lost the other day, and hasn't played its best football, I would say, in 4 or 5 weeks. And so if you're a Texas fan, I understand your frustration. Another frustrating loss, and this one felt different. This one felt different than Texas Tech. This one felt different than Alabama. And I'll tell you this, it does not get any easier for Texas. They go into their bye this week. And then how about this? Playing at Kansas State, a team that historically they've had a lot of trouble in Manhattan. I know they've lost a couple times there over the last couple of years, and a couple of them have been close. You have TCU at home, which TCU doesn't seem to lose. 7-0 right now, atop the Big 12 standings by themselves. You play TCU. At Kansas is not a walkover anymore. Baylor at home. And so I don't know what a good enough record is where people get off Steve Sarkisian's back. But my thing is, you got to beat Baylor. They're not very good this year. You got to beat Kansas. I don't care. No excuses. Play like a champion, to quote Vince Vaughn in Wedding Crashers. I think you got to split Kansas State and TCU. I think if you go 0-2 against Kansas State and TCU in this era with Quinn Ewers, as you're getting set to leave the Big 12 and they're running the Big 12 when you're on your way out, I just think it'd be a really, really, really bad look. I just want